A poor little girl was sleeping when she discovered her house was on fire. After trying to escape the fire, she was criticized by everyone because, "Wake up, Emily. Come kiss your parents goodbye before they leave for the airport." The voice was gentle and warm, like the last bit of sun through a winter window. Emily stirred beneath the quilt, her small arms wrapped around a faded brown teddy bear, with one ear barely hanging on. She blinked slowly, the morning light spilling through the curtains like milk over blue china. With just a few days left until school starts again after summer vacation, Emily is enjoying the last few days of sleeping in late. She sat up. "Are they leaving now?" "They'll be late if they don't. Your mama's pacing already." Emily slipped her feet into the bunny slippers by the bed and shuffled down the hall. In the kitchen, Lisa Whitman stood with her coat unzipped and a travel mug clutched in one hand. John was crouched near the door, zipping his suitcase with one hand while holding a phone call with the other. His voice was muffled but hurried. When Emily stepped in, Lisa knelt immediately, brushing her daughter's hair back from her face. "There you are, sleepyhead," she said, planting a soft kiss on her forehead. "Mommy and Daddy will be back soon. Just a few days, okay? You be good for Grandma." Emily nodded, eyes still sticky with sleep. "I will." John hung up and came over, scooping her up into his arms. "We'll bring you something from Mexico, something colorful and noisy and entirely inappropriate for bedtime." Emily giggled. Lisa looked at her one last time, the smile on her face unable to hide the flicker in her eyes. She crouched down again and adjusted the pink collar of Emily's shirt. "If you light one of the scented candles with Grandma, remember to blow it out before bed. Deal?" "Deal." They left in a flurry of kisses and keys jangling, and then the house fell back into stillness, the kind only grandparents' homes seemed to know. Outside, the old oak tree creaked lazily in the breeze. Yellow leaves tapped against the kitchen window. The town beyond their fence stirred slowly awake. Car doors slamming, a dog barking twice, then silence again. Later that morning, Grandma and Emily rolled dough together on the counter. The smell of nutmeg and butter filled the kitchen. The old clock in the living room ticked steadily, like a patient heartbeat. "Push it just a little thinner," Grandma said. "Like this." Emily followed, her tiny hands imitating the motion. Flour dusted her nose and her sleeves. Muffin sat in the corner, propped against a jar of cinnamon sticks, as if watching over them like a flour-covered guardian. They moved from baking to folding laundry, then to watering the geraniums on the porch. The rhythm of the day was simple and warm, like music you knew all the notes to, even if you didn't know their names. Grandma settled in her old rocking chair just before dusk. Emily climbed up beside her with a well-worn storybook. "Can we read the one about the brave little sparrow again?" "Of course," Grandma said, brushing her grey hair back. "It's always been my favorite." Outside, the sky faded from gold to lavender. A single moth tapped against the window glass. The world quieted as the page turned. "The sparrow had no fear," Grandma read softly, not because she was strong, but because she knew that even the storm had an end. Dinner was modest, but perfect, stew with carrots and bread still warm from the oven. Lisa had made the dough the night before and left it in the fridge, with a note that said, "Don't forget this part." They ate with the television on mute, letting the candlelight dance across the table. Emily laughed when the flame flickered every time Grandma reached for the salt. "Is it scared of you?" she asked. "More like respectful," Grandma replied, eyes twinkling. "I'm older than fire." After dinner, Emily took her bath and got into her pajamas. Muffin waited on her pillow, and a soft lullaby played from the little music box her dad had fixed up years ago. As Emily snuggled into bed, Grandma came in and sat beside her. "Do you think the sparrow was really that brave?" Emily asked. "I think bravery is just doing what needs to be done." Even when your knees are shaking, Grandma answered. So yes, I think she was. Emily smiled. Then I want to be brave too. You already are, love, Grandma whispered, leaning down to kiss her cheek. The lights dimmed. The house exhaled into night. Outside, the wind brushed against the siding like a quiet thought. Grandma stood by the kitchen sink, checking that the back door was locked, that the stove was off. She paused by the table, blew out the candle, and reached for the light switch. It hit her mid-step, a sudden tightness across her chest. Her hand faltered mid-reach. She gripped the edge of the table, but her legs buckled under her. She fell silently, like a dropped cloth. The dim light from the stove's clock blinked on the floor near her shoulder. Her hand trembled as it crawled toward the phone on the chair. She got hold of it. Dialed. 911, a voice answered, but her lips couldn't form words anymore. Everything turned to sound. The wind outside, the tick of the old clock, the faint hum of the fridge. And then nothing but the long, slow pulse of her own heart, struggling to hold on. The wind brushed against the window, like someone whispering a secret too soft to catch. Somewhere in the distance, a lawn sprinkler sputtered to life, its rhythm offbeat and oddly comforting in the stillness. The town was quiet, but not asleep. It watched, like an old dog by the door, not entirely relaxed. Emily sat up in bed. There was no reason, no loud noise, no nightmare, just something in the air that tugged at her, like a thread she didn't remember tying. She glanced toward the door. No light spilled in from the hallway, no quiet voice humming in the kitchen, no slippers sliding softly across the hardwood floor. She reached for Muffin and pulled him tight against her chest. The phone call came as soon as Emily padded into the kitchen in her socks. The receiver was cold against her cheek, and her mother's voice sounded far away. "Sweetheart, I need to tell you something, but don't be scared, okay?" Emily didn't answer, just stood by the kitchen table where yesterday's napkins were still neatly folded, the way Grandma always left them. Little squares of domestic order in a world that suddenly felt a bit less safe. "Grandma had to go to the hospital last night," Lisa said, "but she's going to be all right. She's with good doctors." Emily didn't speak right away. She looked over at the empty hallway, the sun touching only the top step. "You're by yourself?" Lisa asked. Emily nodded, before realizing her mum couldn't see that. "Yes. I've called Mrs. Donner next door. She's going to check on you." "I need you to stay inside. Keep the doors locked, and don't answer if someone knocks unless you know who it is." Emily held Muffin tighter. "Will Grandma be okay? She's in good hands, and Daddy and I are already on our way home." John's voice cut in, faint, on speaker. "Just one more night, Em. After tonight, when you wake up, I'll be right there next to you, okay?" Emily nodded again. "Okay." She poured herself a bowl of cereal, added too much milk, and watched it soak the flakes until they sagged. The chair opposite hers stayed empty until she went and grabbed Muffin, propped him up with a folded towel, and placed a spoon across the bowl in front of him. "It's kind of weird, isn't it?" she murmured. "Eating alone." After breakfast, she washed the dishes, dried them with one of Grandma's old tea towels, then folded the same towel neatly and placed it back by the sink, just like Grandma always did. She swept the floor, even though there wasn't much to sweep, then sat on the bottom step and stared at the dusty beam of sunlight crawling along the carpet. There was no music, no television, just the steady tick of the wall clock and the occasional creak of the old pipes. Around noon, the doorbell rang. Emily peeked through the curtain before opening. Mrs. Donner, in her wide sun hat and blue sweater, stood with a covered dish and a plastic bag. "I brought you lunch," she said, "and a few other things your mom asked me to drop off." Emily stepped aside. "Thank you." "Of course, honey." Donna placed the food on the counter. Lisa said you've been real brave. She's proud of you. Emily looked down. I'm just staying put like she said. Well, that's all anyone can ask, isn't it? Donna smiled and opened the fridge, organizing containers as if it were her own. Your grandma's strong. She'll be home before this week's out. After Donna left, Emily unwrapped the dish, mac and cheese, still warm, and sat back at the table. She gave Muffin a pretend sniff. Too cheesy for you? She asked. Guess I'll eat both. The afternoon dragged its heels. Outside, the clouds shifted into a dull grey, thick and unmoving. Emily sat by the window with a book open on her lap, though she read the same paragraph 4 times without remembering any of it. Occasionally, she glanced through the gap in the curtains. Nothing moved. Then something did. A flicker, a shadow beyond the backyard fence, too fast to make out clearly. Just a flash of motion low to the ground, like someone ducking. Emily straightened, heart bumping once, then twice. She leaned forward, pressing her face against the glass, trying to catch it again. But the yard was still. Only the wind in the hedge, the usual sway of things that didn't mean anything. Still, she slid the curtain fully closed and moved back from the window. Evening came in pieces. First the light changed, bluer, quieter. Then the house seemed to hunch a little, like it was bracing against the dark. Emily made a peanut butter sandwich for dinner. She ate it in small bites, chewing slowly while staring at the flickering candle her grandma usually lit during winter evenings. The girl blew out the scented candle. She remembered what Mom had said about the candles. After dinner, she checked all the doors. Lock, twist, test. Then she turned off the lights, one by one. At the foot of the stairs, she looked back down the hallway, eyes resting on the quiet kitchen and the empty living room. She climbed into bed without brushing her teeth, pulled the blanket up over her chin, and whispered to Muffin, "Just tonight." The house was still. Not the same kind of still as in the morning. This was different. It pressed against the windows, hovered at the edges of every room. Even Muffin seemed quieter than usual. Then, something drifted through the air. Barely there. A smell. Not sharp, not strong, but unfamiliar. Emily wrinkled her nose, sat up slightly. She looked around her room, sniffed the air again. There it was. Faint and smoky, like burnt toast or the smell of an old match, just struck. She pulled the blanket tighter around herself, stared at the door, listened for anything. But the house made no sound. "Maybe it's nothing," she whispered to Muffin. The smell didn't go away. It lingered, not loud or obvious, but persistent, like a whisper that wouldn't stop. Emily lay still for a long minute, listening to the kind of silence that made her ears hum. Her fingers curled around Muffin's soft belly, and for the first time since the trip started, she felt something colder than the night air crawl into her chest. She swung her legs off the bed. The floor was cool. Her toes barely made a sound as she padded toward the door, opened it slowly. The hallway was empty, the dim glow of the upstairs nightlight flickering faintly, almost unsure of itself. Then she smelled it stronger. Burnt fabric? No. It was thicker than that. The sort of smell that stayed in your clothes, your hair. She crept to the top of the stairs. That's when she saw it. Smoke, grey and low, curling up from the bottom floor like mist, only heavier. It swirled sluggishly, climbing with a steady intent. Emily's breath caught in her throat. She stared, unblinking, until her lungs reminded her to move. "Is Grandma home?" she called out, her voice breaking on the second syllable. No answer, no footsteps, no warm reply, no coughing in the next room, no sound of the back door being closed or the kettle whistling. Just smoke. And the ticking of the hallway clock. now too loud. She grabbed Muffin under one arm and started down the stairs, but her heel caught on the edge of the third step. The next few seconds came all at once. Her foot slipped, her knee struck wood, her elbow scraped along the banister. Then a white-hot sting flared across her shin as she landed in a twisted, crumpled heap, 2/3 of the way down the staircase. She didn't scream. She wanted to. But the air was thick now, heavy with ash. Her throat rasped. She pulled herself up, her legs screaming under her. She bit her lip so hard she tasted copper. Don't cry. Just move. She leaned against the wall, using her shoulder to steady herself as she dragged her body toward the front hall. The smoke was everywhere now, seeping in from under the kitchen door, coiling through the baseboards. The front door was only a few feet away, but the hallway stretched like a tunnel. Her father's voice echoed faintly inside her head, like a lighthouse beam cutting through fog. If anything bad happens, you get out of the house and call 911. Don't wait. Don't hide. Just run. She reached the door, hands fumbling at the lock. Her fingers slipped. She coughed. Violent. Raw. Her knees gave out again, but she didn't fall this time. She clung to the doorknob, pulled it down, twisted. The door gave. The night air rushed in, slicing through the heat like cold water poured onto iron. Emily stumbled out onto the porch, eyes streaming. She didn't even feel the cement under her bare feet. Didn't feel the scrape on her cheek from where she brushed the brick wall. She just moved, somehow, out into the grass, where the smoke thinned. Muffin dangled from her elbow, his ear blackened now. She reached into her pajama pocket. Miraculously, the little phone was still there. Her fingers shook as she unlocked it. She pressed the green button and brought it to her ear, though her hand wouldn't stop trembling. A voice answered, calm, measured. 911, what's your emergency? Emily blinked hard, trying to form words. The world wavered in front of her, colors swimming like oil in water. Her voice came out in bursts, not full sentences, just pieces. Fire. My house. Mommy and Daddy. Not home. The operator's voice lowered, gentle but steady. Are you safe, sweetheart? Are you outside? Emily nodded, then remembered again. Yes, she choked. Outside. Barefoot. My grandma's in the hospital. I'm alone. I think someone... She couldn't finish the sentence. The air tasted like burnt plastic. Her knees buckled, and she sat down hard on the lawn, curling up as small as she could. The operator told her help was on the way, asked her to stay on the line. She tried, but the phone slipped from her fingers and landed in the grass. Still open, still calling. Emily sat there, shaking, smoke drifting out from the front door behind her, like some shadow creature crawling free. Somewhere in the distance, a siren rose. Not loud. Not yet. But it was coming. And Emily, knees hugged to her chest, said the only thing she could manage out loud, to no one in particular. I didn't leave the candle on. I didn't. I blew it out. I did. Muffin lay in her lap, half covered in ash. The night pressed in again, but this time it wasn't quiet. Gerald had always been a light sleeper, not the kind who rose at every creak, but the kind who noticed when something was off. And tonight, it was the smell. Not sharp enough to be wood smoke, not clean enough to be a neighbor grilling late. It came through the side vent, tugged him out of half sleep like a persistent thought you can't place. He rolled over and looked at Donna, sleeping steady, one arm over the blanket. He hesitated. Then he stood up, slid into his slippers, and went to the window. That's when he saw it. Through the hedge. A flicker, not yellow like a porch light, not steady like a lamp left on. Red, moving. His hand slapped the hallway light switch. Donna! Donna, get up! Something's burning! Within minutes, the cul-de-sac stirred like a hive. Gerald was outside, pulling the garden hose from its coil. 2 neighbors down brought small fire extinguishers. Someone shouted to call 911, but the line was already busy. Emergency services had been contacted. Smoke billowed out from the Whitmans' back windows now, a slow, choking cloud that didn't match the quiet of the block. Emily hadn't been seen. Someone yelled that a child might still be inside. Werner Collins drove straight through the light at Shaw and 5th, sirens slicing the night like glass. Structure fire, residential. Minor possibly trapped, came the dispatcher's voice through the radio. Karim Lopez checked the address. Whitman's place. You remember that noise Frank made about them and the zoning committee last spring? Werner didn't answer. His eyes were fixed forward, jaw set. They arrived less than 5 minutes after the call. The house looked like it was breathing fire through its teeth. Neighbors were gathered on the sidewalk, holding phones, buckets, anything. Smoke clung to the lawn like a second skin. The front porch was scorched and empty, until they spotted her. Near the entertainment console in the front room, through a clearing in the smoke, there she was. A girl, small, sitting, not moving much. Werner and Karim went in without a word. Karim reached her first, crouching low. Hey, you with me? Emily looked up, eyes glassy, skin streaked with soot. She was cradling Muffin, her pajama legs soaked with blood near the shin. Her lips moved. Mommy. Fire. I tried. I didn't mean to. Werner was beside them now. Let's get her out. They didn't run. They moved steady, practiced. Werner carried her like something ancient and breakable, Karim guiding the way through shifting smoke. Emily didn't fight. She leaned into the fireman's chest, trembling, eyes half-lidded. The moment they stepped onto the grass, the headlights hit them. John's car skidded to a stop across the road. Lisa was out before the brake pedal bounced back, running barefoot over the lawn. Emily! Emily! Her scream was raw, not frantic, but primal. The kind of sound that only happens once and only ever in the presence of something truly unbearable. Werner turned, and Emily turned with him, just enough to see her mother's face. Mommy! Lisa dropped to her knees as Werner gently placed the girl in her arms. I'm sorry, Emily whispered. I think I forgot the candle. No, baby. It's okay. It's okay. Mommy's here. John wrapped around them both, a shield against everything else. His hand covered the back of Emily's head. Lisa kissed her again and again, between sobs. I'm sorry I left you. I'm sorry. Werner, standing a few feet away, still had ash on his sleeves. He looked back at the house. It wasn't the candle. Lisa blinked. What? There's accelerant. I could smell it near the back door. This wasn't from the living room. This started behind the kitchen. Karim nodded beside him. Smells like lamp oil or gas. It was set. The quiet was broken by the snap of a gate. Frank Mallory stood at the edge of his yard in a robe, waving one arm in the air. What the hell happened? He barked. Your fire just burned my rose trellis. Do you know how much time that took? Some of those plants are heirlooms. Lisa looked up, still on her knees, arms around her daughter. John stood and stepped forward. I'm sorry, Frank. We'll replace what was lost. Whatever you need, we'll fix it. Replace? Frank scoffed. You think this is about money? Your kid almost lit the whole block up. What was she doing with fire? John's voice tightened. It wasn't her. Then who? You think houses light themselves? Daniels arrived just then, stepping between the men with practiced calm. Sir, he said to Frank, we'll need you to give a statement. There are signs this may be arson. Arson? Frank crossed his arms. Don't go blaming me. I was asleep. We're not blaming anyone yet, Daniels said, his eyes moving to the back of Frank's slippers, where small flecks of ash clung to the rubber soles. Lisa pulled Emily closer again. Werner turned to Daniels quietly. "There's melted wax under the kitchen window. Someone used a candle to start it. Not a scented one. One of those survival sticks." Daniels nodded slowly. "Get a full perimeter sweep and check for footprints. Backyard only." The flames had been beaten down. The house stood, blackened in places, its windows blown out. But it was still there. Emily sat in the back of the ambulance now, leg bandaged, a fresh blanket around her shoulders. Muffin had been dusted off, resting beside her. Lisa hadn't let go of her hand once. The fire was out. But something else had started. Something still invisible, but moving. Like smoke under a door. It had been a week, and yet the smell of smoke still clung to everything. The corners of drawers, the stitches in the couch cushions, even the pages of the books in Emily's backpack. It lived in her hair, no matter how many times Lisa rinsed it out gently with lavender shampoo. She'd gone back to school on Monday. Lisa had asked her twice that morning, once at the breakfast table and again in the car, if she was sure. Emily nodded both times, too small and too polite to say out loud what she was actually feeling. The first half of the day passed in slow motion. Kids stared, whispered. A few were kind, but more were curious, the cruel kind of curious. During lunch, someone had slipped a folded paper into her cubby. She opened it with small, unsure hands. A childlike drawing. A house. On fire, and next to it, a stick figure with long hair and big red X's for eyes. A girl whispered near her elbow, "That's what happens when you're bad with candles." Emily said nothing. She folded the picture once, then again, and put it in her pocket with both hands shaking. In the bathroom after class, she sat on the edge of the sink, her pant leg rolled up, gently wiping around the edge of the healing scab with a damp tissue. She winced as the blood came through again. Just a little. The door creaked open. Lisa stood in the doorway. She'd arrived early to pick her up and found the classroom empty. "Emily?" The girl didn't look up. She kept dabbing, pretending the sting in her leg mattered more than the lump in her throat. Lisa stepped forward slowly. "Honey." Emily finally looked. Her cheeks were pink, not just from the effort, but from something hot and unspoken. "I was careful," she said. "I blew it out. I know I did." Lisa didn't respond with words. She sat beside her on the cold bathroom bench, pulling Emily into her arms like she was 6 months old again. For a while, neither of them said anything. Then Emily's voice came, soft and flat. "What if it was me?" Lisa blinked. "What? What if I forgot? What if I thought I blew it out, but I didn't?" She looked down at Muffin, clutched against her chest. "Would you still hold me like this?" Lisa didn't hesitate. "I'd hold you tighter." At the school board meeting that week, Ms. Mary Blake asked to speak. She stood in front of the classroom during morning homeroom with calm, clipped authority. "Leave a comment, watermelon, if today is an even-numbered day, and if this story comes to you on an odd-numbered day, write cantaloupe." The children were restless. Someone giggled. Another rustled a candy wrapper. "I need you to listen." They didn't, at least not right away, so she tried something different. She pulled out a photo, an old one, of her own dog, Murphy, sitting in a rainstorm in a yellow jacket. "This is Murphy. The day after our house caught fire when I was 10, he was scared for weeks. Not because he got hurt, but because he thought he'd done something wrong." Silence. "I've heard some of you have been saying things about Emily." Emily shrank in her chair. Miss Blake didn't look at her. "Let me say this clearly. Bravery doesn't always look like firefighters or capes. Sometimes it's a girl sitting still when everyone's pointing fingers. Sometimes it's surviving something without getting angry back." She turned to the board. "This classroom doesn't tolerate cruelty dressed up as curiosity. Not now. Not ever. No one spoke, but Emily heard one or two notebooks shut a little more gently than usual. Elsewhere in town, another scene was unfolding. Frank Mallory sat at the police station, an empty paper cup of coffee beside him, arms crossed. "I want to file a claim," he said flatly. "Property damage, emotional distress. My prize lilies are toast. You know how hard it is to grow hibiscus that full in this climate." Daniels looked unimpressed. Frank tapped the desk. "I warned the zoning board last year, told them that family was trouble." "You're saying the fire was their fault?" Daniels asked, scribbling in his pad, but not looking up. "Kids and candles don't mix, and if you ask me, Lisa's too soft on that girl. No discipline, no respect." Daniels finally did look up. "Frank, were you home that night?" "I was asleep." "You saw nothing?" "I smelled it when it was too late, just like everyone else." Daniels tapped his pen twice against his notes. "Right." Frank pushed the paperwork across the desk. "I expect this to move fast. The community's watching. No one wants a kid who plays with fire living next door." Daniels didn't respond, just tucked the form into a folder and leaned back, and said nothing. That night, at home, Lisa stood outside Emily's bedroom door, listening. Soft talking, Emily was whispering to Muffin again. Lisa didn't catch the words, but she caught the tone, that particular hush of a child trying to tell herself something comforting. That's when Lisa opened the door, came in quietly, and lay down beside her without a word. Emily didn't speak right away, just turned over, pressed her face into her mother's chest. "If it was me," she mumbled, "I still want you to be proud of me." Lisa kissed her forehead, her voice breaking just a little. "I'm proud of you already." The evidence board in the corner of the precinct had grown crowded. Photos, printouts, maps, all tacked in neat rows, strings of red yarn trailing between them like veins. At its center, the floor plan of the Whitman house, marked up in thick blue Sharpie. Arrows traced the heat path. Timelines had been scrawled in Daniel's tight block script. Ray Hudson leaned in, arms crossed, eyes narrowed. "We're missing a piece." Daniels didn't answer. He was watching the playback, again, from the security feed of Mrs. Thompson's porch camera. The grainy footage flickered in that unsettling way home surveillance often did. Colors too green, shadows jumping. But the figure was clear enough. 9:12 p.m. A man stepped through the break in the backyard fence and crossed into the Whitman property. "He's carrying something," Ray said. Daniels nodded. "Too long to be a flashlight. Doesn't move like a tool." Ray squinted. "Lantern?" Daniels paused the frame, enlarged. Frank Mallory. Even in profile, even in washed-out infrared, the silhouette was unmistakable. The hunched shoulder, the angle of his elbow, the lazy, overconfident stride of a man who doesn't think anyone's watching. Daniels leaned back in his chair. "Play it again." The next morning, Bobby Lane met them in the parking lot behind his hardware store. "I didn't think it mattered," he said, nervously scratching the back of his neck. Daniels gave him time. "I mean, it's Frank. He's always buying stuff. Paint, wire, pest stuff." Bobby glanced toward the open garage. But 2 days before the fire, he comes in asking for outdoor candles, big ones, the citronella type, but he doesn't want the smell. Said he needed them for a quiet party in the garden. "Anything unusual about what he bought?" Ray asked. "They were survival candles, heavy duty, meant for camping or blackouts, not the kind you use for decoration. I only had a few left, kept them in backstock. He took all of them." Daniels jotted notes in his book. Bobby hesitated. "He paid cash." "Of course he did," Ray muttered. By Thursday afternoon, Daniels and Ray sat down with Dave and Ronnie at O'Malley's bar. Ronnie looked up from the drink he was cleaning. "Frank?" Dave laughed under his breath. "You boys digging up skeletons, or just swatting flies?" Daniels didn't smile. "We're following a lead." "Well, you know Frank's been griping about that family since last spring," Ronnie said. "Wouldn't shut up about the zoning committee, the fence line. Said they stole his land with fancy papers and fake tears." Dave leaned forward. "About a month ago, he got lit, really lit, and said something about giving them a bonfire they won't forget. We thought he meant a trash pile or a prank." Ray raised an eyebrow. "He used the word bonfire?" Dave hesitated, then nodded. "Said he had matches and patience." Daniels closed his notebook slowly. It was all piling the same direction now. Back at the firehouse, Werner and Karim Lopez ran a final walkthrough of the interior. They stood side by side near what remained of the kitchen. "You see how the pattern folds in from here?" Werner pointed to the baseboard along the back door. The wood was charred in a curved streak. Karim nodded. "It pushes in, not out. Means ignition started here, not inside." "Exactly. No way a scented candle in the front room throws this kind of arc across two interior walls. And there," he motioned to the soot mark just above the tile line. "Look how it bloomed. That's from oil vapor flash." Karim reached into the evidence bag and pulled out a warped tin cylinder. "Recovered this from under the bush near the back window. Wicks still intact. Candle like Bobby described." Werner frowned. "Somebody lit it, jammed it through the window crack, let it find the curtain. No glass broken. Curtain probably dangled low enough. Took just a minute of flame, and the draft did the rest." That evening, Daniels sat in his office, files open, coffee cooling by the window. He had what he needed. Motive, bitter zoning loss, and escalating neighbor tension. Means, survival candle, oil scent residue, outdoor access. Opportunity, confirmed presence at the backyard by surveillance footage. Attitude, public outbursts, threats overheard at the bar, no alibi. He leaned back in his chair and tapped the pen against his lip. "Frank Mallory," he said out loud. Ray stepped in, holding a fresh set of photos. "We got the shoe print comparison. Matches Frank's old yard boots. Size, wear pattern, even the chipped edge from the heel." Daniels nodded, slow. "Let's bring him in again," he said. "But not for questions." Ray paused at the door. "You think he'll run?" Daniels looked up, eyes steady. "I think he'll lie, but this time, we're already past that." That night, Lisa found Emily curled up on the couch, eyes locked on the quiet glow of the fireplace screensaver on the TV. She didn't say anything, just sat beside her. After a while, Emily whispered, "Muffin doesn't smell like smoke anymore." Lisa smiled, just faintly. "Number he smells like you again." Emily nodded slowly. And the fire, even in digital form, danced without fear. The hospital hallway stretched ahead like a question no one wanted to answer. Emily clutched Muffin tight to her chest as she and Lisa stepped out of the elevator. Her small hand held onto her mother's, not because she was afraid of getting lost, but because she needed something real to hold on to, something warm in a world that still smelled faintly of ash and disinfectant. Room 207. Lisa paused at the door. "You ready?" Emily nodded, though her feet didn't move. The door swung open with a whisper. Inside, the light filtered through blinds in soft, tired stripes. Machines beeped in a quiet rhythm. And in the bed, Heather Whitman looked smaller, wrapped in crisp white sheets, but her eyes lit up the moment she saw her granddaughter. "Emily," she breathed, her voice full of every word she hadn't been able to say the night of the fire. She opened one hand, weak but steady. "Come here, sweetheart." Emily moved without a word. She climbed carefully into the edge of the bed, pressing Muffin between them as if he could keep the space from feeling too much. Then her fingers found her grandmother's, and she held on like they might slip away. "I thought no one would come," she whispered. Heather's thumb brushed over her knuckles, slow and warm. "But someone did, didn't they?" I remembered what Mommy said. I ran. I called. But I was so scared. Heather smiled, not the kind of smile people give when they want to be polite, but the kind that comes from something deep, like truth. "Of course you were scared. Brave doesn't mean not scared, Em. It means you moved through the fire anyway. It means you lived." Emily's chin trembled. "I didn't feel brave?" "But you are," Heather said. "You're the bravest girl I've ever known." The silence after was soft, but heavy, like a blanket wrapped around them both. Later, in the hallway, Emily sat cross-legged on one of the benches near the window, sketching quietly in a notebook. Lisa stood nearby, arms folded, watching as her daughter drew a picture of the hospital room, the window, the bed, the curve of her grandmother's hand. She didn't say anything. Emily didn't either. But something between them was healing. That afternoon, the doorbell rang back home. Lisa opened it to find Werner on the porch, holding a fire station flyer and looking slightly more awkward than usual. "I'm not here on business," he said quickly. "Just wondering if Emily might want to come by the station." We set up a little tour for her. Nothing big, just a few trucks, a helmet her size, and a mission to save a teddy bear. Lisa smiled. "She's inside. I'll ask." Emily came to the door, hesitant. Werner knelt to eye level. "You in the mood to see where the people who run toward fire spend their afternoons?" Emily looked at her mother, then at Muffin, then back at Werner. Finally, she nodded once. The firehouse was cooler than she expected. Echoes bounced off the high ceilings. The fire engine gleamed like a cherry-red dragon, and the gear lined up on the wall looked too big for any person to wear. But there, waiting for her, was a small helmet with the word Cadet written in silver marker, and a firefighter's coat, sleeves rolled up, and a little map drawn in crayon with one bold star labeled Muffin's last location. "Mission is simple," Karim Lopez said, smiling gently. "You're the rescuer, he's the victim." Emily suited up. The boots flopped a little when she walked. Her helmet tilted sideways every time she turned. But she didn't mind. She followed the map through a maze of foam mats and cardboard tunnels, crawling on hands and knees. Her knees ached. Her elbow scraped against a corner. But she didn't stop. She found Muffin wrapped in a towel behind a box labeled FLAMES. She pulled him close and shouted, "Rescue complete!" The applause from the firefighters was soft, but full, not loud, just enough. Later, she sat on the back of the engine, helmet off, her hair stuck to her forehead with sweat. Werner joined her with 2 juice boxes. "First fire I worked," he said. "I was sure I'd faint. Couldn't even get my gloves on straight." Emily blinked at him. "Really?" He nodded. "Tried to look cool. Wasn't. But I ran in anyway." "Were you scared?" "Terrified." Emily looked down at Muffin. "But you did it. Being brave doesn't mean the fear goes away," Werner said. "It means you go anyway." That night, after dinner, after bath time, after Lisa kissed her forehead and turned off the light, Emily pulled her survivor book from under her pillow. She clicked her flashlight on low and opened to a fresh page. She didn't write much, just one sentence. "Today, I saw the light inside the fire, and it didn't scare me." She drew a tiny flame beside it, and next to it, a little girl holding a bear. Then she clicked off the light. Downstairs, Lisa sipped her tea and stared out the window into the quiet yard. Upstairs, in the room that had once smelled of smoke, a child finally slept without fear. The precinct felt colder than usual. Frank Mallory sat across the table, his arms crossed, face pinched. The overhead light buzzed faintly, casting long shadows that touched the corners of the interrogation room like fingers. Daniels dropped the first photo onto the table. "This is from Mrs. Thompson's porch cam, 9:12 p.m. You recognize yourself?" Frank barely looked. Blurry. Could be anyone. Daniels placed the next item beside it, an invoice. 2 days before the fire, you bought 6 survival-grade candles from Bobby Lane. He says you asked for ones without citronella. Frank scoffed. "I camp. That's not illegal." Another document landed with a soft thud. Witness statements from O'Malley's. "Dave and Ronnie remember you saying you'd give the Whitmans a bonfire they wouldn't forget." Frank sat a little straighter, his mouth tightening. That was a joke. Daniels leaned in, voice low. "You climbed their fence, carried one of those candles into their backyard, lit it, set it near the curtain where the wind could help finish the job." Silence. Then a sharp exhale. "I didn't know the girl was inside." Daniels stared. "You didn't think to check?" I thought it'd scare them, that's all." Frank's voice cracked, and for a moment the man beneath the anger appeared. Smaller, uncertain. "It was late. I figured everyone was gone. Lights were off." "You figured wrong," Daniels said. "There was a child. She got hurt. She called 911 barefoot in the smoke." Frank looked away. "I didn't mean—" "Doesn't matter," Ray Hudson said from the doorway. "You meant to start a fire. The rest is consequence." Frank collapsed into the chair, as if the weight of the words finally settled on him. "They humiliated me. That zoning meeting. They lied. Took the land right under my nose. I lost everything." Daniels nodded slowly. "So you decided to take something back?" Frank didn't reply. Daniels stood and opened the door. "Frank Mallory, you're under arrest for arson and endangering the life of a minor." The cuffs were cold against Frank's wrists. His hands, once calloused from gardening, shook faintly as he was led down the hallway. Behind the glass, uniformed officers looked up, some surprised, some unsurprised. In the holding room, Frank sat alone for a while. He stared at the floor, eyes unfocused. In his mind, he replayed that night, not the fire, but the weeks before. The heated words with Lisa in the driveway, the committee's final vote, the flowers he planted with shaking hands. Regret came quietly, not as a wave, but as a tide, slow and inescapable. Meanwhile, news traveled faster than Frank had moved in years. At the town cafe, people whispered over coffee cups. "It was Frank. Can you believe it?" one woman murmured. "They say he bought the candles himself." "Always thought he was too angry for his own good," a man muttered. "But setting a fire—" Sympathy for the Whitmans swelled, not just because of what they'd been through, but because of what had almost been lost. At home, Lisa was folding laundry when the call came. She didn't speak, as Daniels explained. She just sat down on the edge of the couch, pressing the phone tighter to her ear. When the call ended, she climbed the stairs, quiet as a breath, and opened Emily's door. The little girl was coloring on the carpet. Nothing special, just shapes. Flames that looked more like flower petals now. Muffin sat beside her, propped upright with a hair tie. Lisa knelt. "Emily," she said softly. The girl turned, cautious. "Is it okay?" Lisa nodded. "They found out who did it." Emily's eyes widened. "Was it really not me?" "No, baby. It wasn't you. It was never you." For a moment, Emily didn't speak. She pressed her face into Lisa's neck, her arms wrapping tight around her mother. Lisa held her like she was trying to gather every broken piece and put it back in place. Her hand cradled the back of Emily's head. "You see now? It wasn't your fault. It never was." Emily's voice came small, muffled by her mother's shoulder. "But I thought, maybe I did something wrong." Lisa kissed her temple. "No, sweetheart. You did something right. You survived. You were strong. You were brave when no one else could be." That night, while the town buzzed with updates and opinions and whispered judgment, Emily sat at her desk. She pulled out her survivor book. The pages smelled faintly of crayon and dust. She turned past her sketches, past the page where she'd written, "Today, I saw the light inside the fire," until she reached a blank sheet. She picked up her pen. This time, her words came easy. "The fire was not my fault. I'm not made of smoke. I'm made of stars." She drew a new picture underneath, a flame with wings. Outside her window, the night pressed gently against the glass, but inside, Emily felt warm, whole, the kind of warmth that doesn't come from fire, but from something better, from truth, from love, and from the quiet knowing that even the most painful masks eventually fall away. The sun was soft that morning, the kind that warmed windows, but didn't ask much of the day, the kind that made silence feel like a choice. Emily sat at the kitchen table, legs curled beneath her, as Nurse Helen Moore unpacked a small wooden box. Inside were colored pencils, smooth stones, and a stack of thick, creamy paper that smelled faintly of lavender. "We don't have to talk today," Helen said gently, setting down a jar of buttons. "But if you want to draw, I'd love to see what your world looks like now." Emily didn't speak. She just reached out, fingers brushing over the colored pencils, choosing green first, then yellow. She began to draw a house. Not how it looked now, but how it used to be, and might be again. The roof was steady, the windows open. There were flowers out front, big pink ones, like the kind Grandma used to grow. And in the yard, under a sun that smiled like it knew a secret, stood a small girl with messy hair and a wide-eyed bear. Helen watched quietly as the picture took shape. When Emily finally looked up, she whispered, "There's no smoke in this one." Helen nodded, her voice like a soft bell. "That's because this one's about what's still here, not what was taken." Later that week, Mary Blake stopped by with a small gift. "I used to have a notebook like this when I was little," she said, handing it to Emily in a simple brown paper bag. "It's not for homework, it's for heart work." Emily opened it slowly. The first page was blank. The second had just 5 words written in Mary's careful hand. "Write down one good thing. Underneath it, every day, even the hard ones." Emily ran her fingers over the page like it was made of glass. That night, she wrote, "Today I drew the sun, and it stayed." The next week, during recess, a boy with freckles and dirt under his nails approached her behind the swing set. It was Peter, one of the kids who had whispered too loudly the day she came back. He stood awkwardly, holding something behind his back. "I was mean," he said, "because I was scared." Emily didn't answer. She just looked at him, waiting. Peter fidgeted, then held out a toy fire truck. Its wheels were scratched, the ladder missing, but it was clean, cared for. "This was mine, but I think you're the brave one now, so it should be yours." Emily took it with both hands. They didn't say thank you or you're forgiven, just stood there for a second, then walked to the sandbox together and started to build a castle that looked suspiciously like a fire station. Time passed in pieces. Each day, Helen came with more tools, paper with textures, clay to squeeze, little wooden puzzles with no right answers. They never rushed. Sometimes they didn't talk at all. But the drawings changed. The sky got brighter. the flowers bigger, and eventually, the girl in the corner started to smile again. One Tuesday, Emily drew her grandmother's chair by the window, with Grandma in it, Muffin on the rug, Lisa holding a watering can, and in the corner, she added herself, holding a notebook that had stars on its cover. She pointed to it as Helen looked. "This is the book where I put the things that stayed," Emily said quietly. Helen smiled. "Then that means healing has already begun." At school, Emily began to laugh again, not loudly, not carelessly, but with small bursts of sound that slipped out when she wasn't guarding herself. She played hopscotch, she chased butterflies, she answered questions in class, and one morning, during story time, she raised her hand and said, "I want to tell you all what happened that night." The room stilled. The teacher hesitated, but nodded. Emily stood, clutching Muffin, and spoke in a clear voice. "It was really dark. I couldn't breathe, but I remembered something Mommy said, and I ran. That's how I got out. No tears, just truth." At home, Lisa stood by the kitchen sink, folding towels. She looked out the window and watched Emily running with Peter and a few other kids, her braid bouncing behind her like a ribbon in the wind. John stepped up beside her, drying his hands. "She's smiling. She's growing," Lisa whispered. "She's healing," John added. Lisa didn't answer right away. She just leaned into his shoulder and sighed. "She's still our baby, but yes, she's becoming something more." That evening, Emily added a new entry to her notebook. "I laughed 3 times today. 2 were real. The third surprised me." She drew a flower beside it, Grandma's favorite kind, then shaded in a sun, just under the title she had now written in careful letters across the top of the page. "The Book of Survival." Below it, she wrote one more line. "Not every fire burns. Some just teach you how strong you are." And for the first time in a long time, she didn't reach for the nightlight. She didn't check the corners of the room. She just curled up under the blanket, pulled Muffin close, and let the quiet take her. This time, the silence wasn't empty. It was peace. It was home. The morning sun poured over the town like a soft lullaby, gentle, golden, and quiet. It touched rooftops and warmed sidewalks, nudging flowers awake and making even the shadows seem kind. There was no wind, only the steady hush of anticipation. This was not just another morning in the square. Today, something new was being born. A small crowd had gathered at the far end of town square, where hedges had been trimmed, where a plot of green once left unattended now held something different. A park, modest and open, but shining in its own right. Fresh grass stretched like a soft welcome mat. White benches curved around a circular clearing. Children skipped along stone pathways, still smelling of mortar. In the very center, under an arch of blooming roses, stood a smooth granite pedestal. Mounted to it, gleaming under the sun, was a bronze plaque. The inscription read, "In honor of Emily Whitman, who did not falter in the fire." People stood shoulder to shoulder, silent as they read. A few murmured the words to themselves, teachers, neighbors, parents, strangers. Every face held a different story. But in that moment, all of them looked toward one name, and one small figure seated quietly in the front row. Emily. Her yellow dress fluttered at the hem, light as dandelion fluff. Muffin, freshly brushed, nestled in her arms. She wore a bracelet made of buttons, a gift from Nurse Helen, and her braid had a yellow ribbon tied just above the nape. But it wasn't her clothes that people noticed. It was her eyes, steady, quiet, present. She didn't hide behind her mother anymore. Lisa sat beside her, hand in hers. John stood at her other side, protective but at peace. The 3 of them were a frame around a single truth. Their family had been tested, broken, and remade, and they were still standing. The mayor took the stage first. His voice was warm, full of practiced grace, but when he looked down at Emily, it softened even more. "Sometimes," he said, "the smallest among us show the greatest strength. Sometimes it takes the voice of a child to remind a whole town what courage looks like." He stepped aside, and all eyes turned to Emily. The microphone looked enormous. The distance to the podium felt longer than it really was. Lisa squeezed her daughter's hand once, then let go. Emily stood. Each step she took was quiet, but certain. She reached the stage, adjusted the mic slightly, and cleared her throat. "Hi," she said, voice small but strong. "My name is Emily, and I was in a fire, a big one. It made everything dark for a while. Not just outside, but in here too." She touched her chest lightly. "I used to think brave meant never being scared, but that's not true. I was scared. I was really scared. But I remembered what Mommy told me. I remembered the people who loved me, and I ran, I called, I kept going." She paused. The crowd leaned in. "And now I know. Brave just means doing the next right thing, even when your knees shake." She looked out at the kids in the front rows. Some had teased her once, others had stayed quiet. Today, they all watched her as if seeing her for the first time. "I'm not scared anymore," she said, "because I'm not alone." Applause rose, not loud at first, but real. It grew, folding over itself like a wave, and soon the whole square was clapping, not out of obligation, but from something deeper, recognition, respect. Werner Collins and Chief Daniel stood in the back, near the rose arch. They didn't speak, didn't need to. They simply looked at each other and exchanged a slow, silent nod, the kind shared by those who have seen the worst and still choose to believe in the best. After the speeches, children scattered toward the swings and the shaded picnic tables. A few lined up to look at the plaque, fingers brushing over Emily's name with awe. Lisa and John brought Emily toward it slowly. The girl stared at the inscription for a long time, then whispered, "It's really there." Lisa knelt beside her. It always was, now it just has a name. Peter came bounding over, dirt already on his knees, a grin stretched ear to ear. "Emily, you're it." Emily blinked. Peter pointed toward a growing group of children gathered near the trees. "We're playing tag. You've got good legs, Whitman." Emily glanced at her parents. Lisa smiled. John nodded once. "Go on," he said. She handed Muffin to her mum and took off across the grass, laughter rising like birds, startled into flight. Her braid bounced behind her. Peter shrieked and ran. Other children followed. Lisa stood with John, her arm looping through his. "She's running again," John said softly. "She's light again," Lisa replied, "and she's ours." Nearby, Nurse Helen stood beside Mary Blake. Both watched in quiet reverence. "I think that park just healed a little more than a patch of land," Mary said. Helen nodded. "I think so too." In the shade beneath the rose arch, a mother lifted her toddler onto her hip and read the plaque aloud. A man with a cane stood for a long moment, staring at the name. And far beyond the square, in rooms once full of fear, peace began to settle like dust after a storm. That night, Emily wrote in her notebook under the covers, flashlight soft against the pages. "Today I didn't think about the fire. I just thought about running, and laughing, and light." She drew herself at the center of the page, arms stretched wide, feet mid-air, and sunlight behind her. Outside, the town was quiet again, but not silent. Because sometimes, even after flames have gone, the light stays, and sometimes it grows. Some stories begin with fire, not just the kind that burns wood or walls, but the kind that tests the soul, quietly, brutally. Emily's story is not just about survival. It's about rediscovery, about learning that courage is not loud, and healing is not sudden. It's about finding light, not in the absence of fear, but within it. We live in a world where children are expected to understand more than they should, and where grown-ups sometimes forget how fragile hearts can be. But what if we slowed down long enough to listen, to see the trembling hands beneath the brave faces? What would we learn from the ones who dared to keep going even when the world around them burned? Emily didn't save a town. She didn't rebuild her house with her hands. But she did something far rarer. She kept her heart open, even after the smoke. And now, we ask you, have you ever mistaken survival for weakness? Have you ever underestimated the quiet bravery of someone small? And more importantly, what light might still be waiting inside your own ashes? The story ends here. But maybe, for you, this is where something begins. Go to bed early if it's dark. A good night's sleep will help you start the day with lots of energy. If it's still light, breathing in the fresh air and meeting friends is a good idea. It's great to know that our audience is appreciating this life. See you in the next video.